Welcome back. Today we'll be looking at process management. As you may be aware, in the first video blog I mentioned that I was going to be creating an artefact which needs to be specific to a year group and it needs to link to the national curriculum. As mentioned, I have chose the Caribbean and it links to geography and music in the national curriculum. So we're going to be looking at the roles that are needed to when you take on a project, what things you need to consider. So we're going to be looking at the roles that need considering and looking at who might be involved. As the previous picture shown, there are lots of roles that are considered when managing multimedia, and that picture was taken from Finney and England's book called Managing Multimedia 2002. But we're mainly just going to be looking at the project manager just for this artefact. A project manager is expected to produce a product by organising and controlling resources according to planned expenditure in a certain time and in a certain way as well, and to a defined quality level, and that was also quoted from Finney and England 2002, page 17. So it talks about we need to know what our client wants. It has been mentioned that it's vital to negotiate with your client, so they might want something, but that might not be feasible, so you need to learn to negotiate. But you also need to understand that they will be paying you to do what they want doing, so you do need to reason with them. There are also stakeholders involved when making an artefact. These are the people that have a stake in the project, so they want it to succeed. So your users, your client, could be a sponsor if it's a big company. You could have a sponsor that's got a stakeholder in the artefact, and they want to see it succeed because they put money into it. It also mentions how a written agreement is vital when making anything with a client, especially with multimedia. Finney and England 2002 suggests that you need a name for your project. You need to understand what your client wants and needs from this artefact. You also need to know what the target audience is. So yes, you might have a client, but that client, for example, could be a teacher, and she wants it for, say, her class of, say, Year 5 pupils. So you need to understand who the target audience is, who you're aiming at. So with your target audience, you need to think about things like the fonts you might use for a younger audience, or you might need to think about the colours that you use. So, for example, in this artefact, mine's aimed at primary school children, around Year 5 and 6 in Key Stage 2. So I need text that's easy for them to understand, but still challenging enough for them to actually learn something and to not find it easy. In the written agreement, we also need to outline the content and the reasons for use. So because I mentioned that this artefact will be related to geography and music, if that was what my client wanted, it'd be pointless me putting something in that maybe, say, relates to science. Yes, it might link to the Caribbean, but it's not what my client wants. So that's where in the content you need to outline what exactly it is about the Caribbean that your client wants. So you might say it will include, and also it is vital that a time frame is set. You need to make sure that your client is reasonable with that time scale, because they've got to understand the work that goes into it, but it also needs to be doable for you as a project manager, say, and realistic. Okay, You also, when managing a project, a multimedia project for example, you need to look at what's already out there. So you need to look at existing maybe artefacts or existing multimedia. So for example, there's BBC Bitesize on the internet 2012, and they say, you know, we could look at what information they have, because that is a website aimed for children across all the ages, and you need to look at, well, do they already have something on the Caribbean? That is it what my client wants? You need to look at what's out there, and possibly what sites the national curriculum recommends. When discussing with your client about what they want from the multimedia file or artefact in this example, it's important to consider the limitations. So reasoning and like we said, negotiating with the client, saying, well, they might want something, but in reality it's not really doable. Security could be an example. Does it need high security, and is that security available? We need to look at the screen resolution, which we've looked at previously. How much storage it's going to take. Is it going to be a big file that's going to take up a lot of space on the client server, for example, in school? Is it really doable? And the type of support that's available, because we could create this artefact and then hand it over to our client finished, it's what they want, but then if something goes down on the artefact, for example, is that support going to be in place? For example, do they have an ICT technician? Do they have someone that's experienced with managing multimedia? Will they be able to fix it? These are all things that you need to consider. As we mentioned, our target audience before, since this artefact is aimed at a school, it is vital to make sure that we consider the actual age of the pupils that it's going to be mainly based on, and is it suitable for that age group as well, because you could take lots of information that, say, might be really hard for them to read and understand and really take in. We need to think about gender as well. Is it just going to be one gender that's going to be looking at it, or is it going to be a mixture? And SEN as well. Is this product based at any SEN children? Because that would change it completely, because although we might have an age range of year 5, there could be some SEN children, which would mean you would need to make it suitable for them, for whatever the needs are. There's also media assets that need to be considered, which include the software and hardware systems that aid the process, and that's quoted by MAP 2013. And then there's the integrated media and interaction plan, which is really just what brings it all together. Okay, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.